Now, let's just quickly move on to Ukraine. And, well, the Netherlands has announced that it is exporting 24 F-16s to Ukraine imminently. And, well, I'm just still wondering who's going to actually fly these things, first of all. So are they going to be flown by Western personnel? Is there anybody in the Ukrainian Air Force that's actually been trained to fly them yet? I don't think so. It takes a significant amount of time to train someone to fly one of these jets. And since it was only a couple of months ago that we saw the RAF announcing that some Ukrainian pilots had gone through basic training, they're not going to be in a position to fly these just yet. But in the meantime, the Russians have released some video of them destroying, if we can get it to run, here we go, destroying Su-27s on the ground. So I believe there were 2 actually destroyed, several others very badly damaged in this drone attack. So it's, pretty clear that any F-16s heading into Ukraine aren't going to last too long, even if they do have anybody to fly them or they do get off the ground. In the meantime, there's an argument going on about intermediate range missiles at the moment because, well, if we think back, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty was signed by Gorbachev and Reagan in 1987. And both countries at that time agreed to abandon nuclear and conventional ground-launched ballistic and cruise missiles with a range of 300 to 3,000 miles, let's say. But then beginning in 2014, the US was busy accusing Russia of being in non-compliance. So they were already building a narrative at that stage. And then they withdrew from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 2019. Russia said that they would refrain from manufacturing or deploying any systems so long as the US didn't deploy them anywhere in the world. But there's been noise of the US doing quite the opposite at the moment. So now Putin is talking about restarting manufacturing of these. We'll come on to the likelihood of that in a second. But let's just have a look at Dimitri Pesov here, because he was commenting on whether there would be any disclosure if there was a deployment of intermediate range missiles by Russia. And he's saying it's obvious that such information is hardly likely to be disclosed. After all, this is an extremely sensitive field related to defense and security. At the same time, you see that the president is raising this issue, and accordingly, as the process with production and so on unfolds, some information will be accessible. So again, an escalation here. But again, this seems to be Russia reacting to what the United States is doing. But the United States has been building this narrative for quite some time. Now, in the meantime, we're seeing a lot of stuff in the Western press about whether Russia is actually capable of building these things. So here is, I think this was Irish media. Sorry, I've knocked the branding off the top of this. Apologize for that. Russia has become so economically isolated that China could order the end of the war in Ukraine. Now, of course, this is a hit piece on China and really suggesting that China could step in and deal with Russia here. But the main thrust of the article is that as a result of sanctions, Russia's economy is so destroyed that it's impossible for it to continue expanding its military industrial capability. Well, that's a bit strange because this particular article seems to not be in line with this article from RUSI, which published around the same time. It's entitled "A Methodology for Degrading the Arms of the Russian Federation." It says, since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia has continued to access critical components from abroad, expanded the production of core weapons, and continued to increase the sophistication of some key capabilities. So, the suggestion that Russia is unable to continue manufacturing weapons is completely ridiculous, but we continue the narrative suggesting that Russia is carrying out a hybrid war in the rest of Europe here, and that it's doing so in a much more kinetic way. So this is from the Institute for the Study of War. If we just expand the graphic, it's showing Western Europe and a number of incidents which are being blamed on Russia without any particular evidence. For example, an arson attack on a warehouse containing Ukrainian aid in Scotland. In Germany, planned arson attacks and explosions foiled by the authorities. In the Czech Republic, a failed arson attack targeting a bus depot. What on earth would an arson attack on a bus depot have to do with Russia? But okay, this is their claim. And of course, we were mentioning the fires in a couple of battery establishments recently in South Korea and this one in Glasgow, and the claim that Russia was somehow behind those as well. And at the same time, the Wall Street Journal pushing out this narrative that Russian saboteurs behind arson attack at German factory. So, this is a continuing narrative. But in the meantime, the Sun, just in time for the election here, has troop fears Britain's armed forces no longer credible amid cuts to record low, warns ex-defence chief Lord Dannatt. And Charles, just in 2 seconds, I mean, this is something that we have been talking about for years, and I'm glad to see that the mainstream media finally starting to catch up.
Well, absolutely. But my take on it would be that the reason this is being done is in order to galvanise people for either conscription or national service, to make people sort of have some sense that the nation is in peril. We've got the threat from Russia, but also we've got the armed forces that are in an insufficient state, and therefore you've got to step forward and do what's right. I think that's the way it's being played.